Hey guys, Will here from MachineLovus.com. I thought it'd be useful for some of you to watch how I take this Jupyter notebook where we've been doing this visualization with Bokeh and move it into something a bit more robust, which is a tested environment, a tested repository of code. Now, if you've been following along with these videos, you'll know that we haven't done everything just in the Jupyter notebook. We also have this tube analysis script, essentially this directory where we've been putting things. We have our config file that contains our API key. So let's start with setting up a test environment. So in this tube analysis directory, I've essentially created a new module, which is tests. Okay, and in there put test core. I think I'm gonna also need an init file. Although this is Python 3, so I might not need it. So let's try to get along without it for the moment. I'm going to use PyTest here. So I just do PyTest, tests, and then test core is this file that I just set up. I don't have PyTest yet, and so I pip install it. Okay, so we have PyTest pip installed. And so let's try to run that command again. And PyTest found no tests, which is great because we don't have any. So what we can do is add a test. And let's just do test core func. This will fail, okay? And we're not sure yet what we want to actually test. We don't know what's in here to test, but we just want to make sure that PyTest will run and catch this and that it will fail. Okay, so it failed. This is what PyTest looks like when it fails. Okay, but if I want to see what PyTest looks like when it's happy, I get this green, which is very, very good to see. It makes me happy to see that green. Okay, so let's keep that failing for now, just so that we know the test is there, so it'll remind us that it's there. Okay, I mentioned that we are moving out of Jupyter, and so we need to think about the structure of our program now. We have core, which is essentially the interface to our program, but core also contains a lot of things around YouTube. And so what I'm going to do is, and we also have the chart itself and things around the chart. I'm going to make a new folder called YouTube, for lack of a better term. And then I am going to make a new folder that's plot, for lack of a better term. Okay, and in plot, it makes sense to me to have something that is the interactive scatter plot. We'll just call it that, interactive scatter plot. Scatter.py. Okay, and then in YouTube, I'm going to have something like return YouTube data. Okay, so I get YouTube data out of YouTube. I get the data out of YouTube, and then out of the plot, we get the interactive scatter. Okay, so we can start moving things around. So out of core, we have this YouTube search. So YouTube search is the thing that returns the data for us. So we can move that into here. Okay, and then here we essentially call, we're going to import, say from YouTube import data, right? And then the structure of our program is such that we are going to get the data out of YouTube data frame data is going to come from data.youtube search, right? And that's going to take some parameters. Okay, and what parameters is that going to take? That's going to take the search term and max results. And I'm just going to pass the search term in through here, and the search term is going to come from here, args.q. And so essentially we can take this and put this here, and that should be okay. So let's get rid of more of this information and just clean up this file a little bit. Okay, so why don't we work on the data, cleaning up data. So search term max results. Okay, and let me just put so now what we can do is add essentially a new test, which is going to be test YouTube data. So this is going to, let's call it test YouTube data. Okay, just be very explicit in what we're doing, and I'm going to put my test over here. Okay, so, and then we will also, let me just view, let me set these to spaces. Okay, so test YouTube data is going to assert false as well. So now if we go here, we're setting up a bunch of failing tests. But if we go to just Python tests now, we have 2 failing tests, which is great. We're racking up tests now, even though they're failing. So what do we actually want to test? We don't want to test the YouTube API. We don't need to call out and make sure that YouTube is working, because that is outside of our domain of our application. We want to unit test the things that we are doing when YouTube returns with information, and so we have to assume that YouTube is going to be available, and that YouTube will be able to return data to us. Okay, so let me turn this into okay, and let me back out of here a little bit. Okay, so what I'm doing is just moving things around, making things a bit cleaner. I don't need the Google key in config, so core is going to slim down into just the essentials here. Just the essentials in core that we need to build an interactive program, just the interface. And we're taking everything else and sort of abstracting it away from core, so we don't have to think about it anymore. What we want to do is make sure that YouTube data works, that it returns data, that we get the data that we expect, but that we don't have to think about it after that, because then we could extend our program essentially and build a sort of a better program, more features, and we'll just know that YouTube itself is working. Okay, so all of this stuff can leave, and so core, you'll notice, is really slimming down, which is great because it should slim down. It shouldn't have to handle connecting to YouTube and getting information out of YouTube, things like that. Just going to make these very explicitly constants, globals, things like that. Okay, so there we are. Okay, so now what is the responsibility of YouTube search? So what we can have is just YouTube search will return the search result from YouTube. Okay, so we can actually just have this YouTube search return search response. And now what's happening here is that we are getting the search response from this YouTube search, and then the part of the code that we want to test is the pieces after this that that we're actually building, the dictionary. We want to ensure that we're getting the dictionary back in the way that we expect, so that we can create our plot. So what I'm going to do is continue shuffling things around, and perhaps you could watch here and see what I'm doing, and then think about if this makes sense to clean this up. Okay, that took a little bit more time than I was expecting, but what you can see is I've broken out this big old function into 3 separate functions that I might break out even more. And I have a function that we can test right now. So what I'm going to do is show you how I sort of build the test for this YouTube videos function. YouTube, okay, so from tube analysis dot YouTube import data. So I'm going to assert data dot. So what I can do is pass in, say I get my output, which is going to be data.youtube videos. And into here, I need to pass a dictionary. So what's going to happen if I pass a empty dictionary into this function? Let's see. What I can do is back out a little bit here. I can do pytest test YouTube data. Okay, so no module name tube analysis. So what I need to do is put this directory in my Python path. So I don't have anything set up for my Python path at the moment. So Python path, let's see if that works now. Okay, so I put that in my Python path so that PyTest could actually find tube analysis. So we have the right import structure here. And we are getting an inconsistent use of tabs and spaces, which is a terrible response that you don't want to see. And it's because my Sublime text editor isn't configured correctly. So I'm going to just switch to spaces. Okay. And then I can run the test again. Okay, unindent does not match. Okay. So this test is already finding a lot of things wrong that I've set up. Okay, so now it's failing in the way that I expect it to fail. So output is an empty list, and asserting an empty list is false. Okay, so that is that's correct. So if I do something like assert not output, okay, now it passes. So if I pass an empty list here, then I'm going to not get any output. Let's call this empty list. I could also do something like this. That should also pass. Okay, so then what I can do is build another test, which I'm going to call output. And if I actually pass something in here that's expected, items, which is a list, and then in there I need to know that this search result, that there's another dictionary ID and kind in here. So I need to know a bit about the actual data structure of the data that's in here, which may not be very good, but I need to have another dictionary of ID and kind and have that equivalent to YouTube video. And then I also need to know that that there is something else in here, title, right? So I need to know a lot about this data that's in here, which is not a best practice. Okay, so what I needed to do was to really build this dictionary of some sample data just to even get this test passing just a little bit. So this really gives you a sense of the kind of code smell, folks will call it, that's in this test. There's just too much information that I need to know about what's being returned in YouTube videos to test that the function is actually returning it. So there's a lot more work that should be done to clean this code up. Okay, so I'm going to leave this here. This is just a introduction to testing, refactoring, thinking about how we want to go about it. I will have to get to parameterization in another video, but you can start to see the kind of work that we have cut out for us when we want to take this from sort of a Jupyter notebook that we've scrambled together into something more robust. It does take work, and this is the part of software engineering that is sort of the engineering part, the systems part, the architecture part. So please like and subscribe this video. I will be coming at you with more videos in the future about software engineering, architecture, data science. And if you are in America, happy Thanksgiving. Take care.